I will open this press conference. It's 1 o'clock. I will open the press conference, and I'm going to turn it over to City Attorney Tim Butler for his statements, and I guess we'll open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, Thursday, 9 o'clock in the morning, we had an administrative hearing concerning the employment status of Officer Nick Houck. That hearing was closed at approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Since that time, the mayor's been considering the evidence and information that's been presented. Earlier today, he issued a final order, which I believe you all have a copy of, and that order terminates Officer Houck from the Bardstown Police Department. We feel like that the order speaks for itself. We would note that he was terminated for his conduct as indicated in the order, and that although somewhat related to the criminal case, the criminal investigation into the disappearance of a local individual, that Mr. Houck's termination is not based on anything that is directly related to that disappearance, and as a matter of what we proceeded to do, we assume for the purposes of our proceedings and for consideration of the information that we had, we assume for our purposes that Officer Houck and anybody else in his family, that they were not guilty, if you will, or involved in any way, shape, or form in that. So we assumed that away, anything related to that away, and did not act with that as our basis. And with that, this is Mayor John Royalty and Chief Rick McCubbin of the Bardstown Police Department, and we'll entertain any questions that you all might have.
Given Brooks Houck ran for sheriff, I think it was last year, and the Nelson County Sheriff's Office is conducting the investigation, has there been any discussion about giving this case to the Kentucky State Police? Is there a conflict of interest there?
You'd have to address that to the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. We don't have any active role in the investigation, the criminal investigation at all.
Who all was at the meeting yesterday?
At the public hearing?
At the meeting?
At the administrative hearing?
Administrative.
At the administrative hearing, there was Mr. Houck and his attorney. There was an attorney representing the city of Bardstown. Chief McCubbin gave testimony. Detective John Snow of the Nelson County Sheriff's Department gave testimony. And the mayor was there, and myself as hearing officer.
Chief McCubbin, you're probably disappointed in the actions by Mr. Houck. Can you talk about your reaction?
Well, yeah, disappointed, obviously. And it's certainly not a happy day for any of us involved at all, that we're even having to address this. But I think in the order, I hope it addresses a lot of my feelings, what I looked at. What we don't have is I know many of you have asked, the charging documents that I submitted to the mayor, Officer Houck, which now that it's adjudicated or public record. And I lined out a lot of stuff in that would probably, address that. This is a case really where it's as much for what a police officer didn't do as much as what he did do, if that makes sense. I looked at it from my perspective that we don't get to pick and choose a lot in law enforcement. That there are things that we will do, we shall do, not that we may do. And I was less than impressed. Was very bothered by some of the actions that were displayed. And though they were addressed the best we could make them, as chief, I just didn't, he was done, is my opinion. what I asked the mayor to do. I guess, is, you know, I expect a lot out of law enforcement. I expect a lot out of the officers that are under me, and that was not a behavior that I was going to accept as chief. And I asked the mayor to please consider my request, that as long as I was chief, I wouldn't have any police officer work under me in that form.
Were you surprised
Yeah.
that he called his brother and interfered with the investigation?
Yes, you know, and that's kind of what led us. That was kind of the first thing. You know, it kind of goes back to what I said a moment ago. We as police, there are just things we don't do. That being one of them. Certainly, someone could have called him, and he could call his brother. But in that case, he doesn't call his brother while he's a police officer. That's unacceptable.
What kind of an impact do you think that this may have on helping to find out what happened to Crystal Rogers?
I couldn't comment on it just because I simply don't know. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I would ask you to ask the sheriff that question. I don't know that he had something or he didn't. I could say that. And I looked at this when I approached our attorney and the mayor, that if this was any police officer in any case, if this was a theft from Walmart, this is not how we do it. This is not how I will not accept it. So I tried to look at it from that perspective, not knowing what impact he would have or not, but it was solely his behavior that we will never know, us anyway. Again, I don't know if the sheriff could elaborate more on that, but I would urge you to reach out to him.
Well, one thing that you should be aware of is that we took great pains to not hinder the criminal investigation. We were in contact with the Sheriff's Department and prosecutors, and we would not have proceeded forward if we felt like that this was in any way going to hinder the investigation into the criminal matter. Also, we made it clear that this is not, it's inappropriate to use this as a vehicle. It's an administrative hearing, a civil matter. It's not appropriate to use it as a vehicle to try to promote or to somehow influence positively the criminal matter. We see this as two separate things, although again related. So we had to proceed with great caution, definitely not to hinder the criminal investigation, knowing full well that what we did may or may not help the criminal investigation.
Can you talk a little bit about the timeline when this investigation into the possible wrongdoings began?
I think some of the dates are in here, but it was a few days after was really the first incident, and really that being the phone call. That was the first thing that obviously I didn't like, and I wasn't going to accept that. And then it just kind of snowballed from there.
How did you guys find out about the phone call to his brother?
The sheriff told me.
The sheriff told you. So the sheriff was aware that he had some type of interference, or at this point he's aware, but was he aware back then when the first phone call went out to his brother?
Let me make sure.
How did the sheriff find out about that phone call to his brother, basically?
I would assume the lead detective told him, and I don't know if the sheriff was there when it happened. I don't know that, but I guess just being sheriff to chief, it went up to him, and then he brought it to my attention what had occurred.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it was a phone call from Officer Houck to his brother, Brooks Houck, while Brooks Houck was being interviewed by a sheriff's detective. And I believe that there was some concern on the part of the sheriff about that happening, as I'm sure there should have been, and he contacted the chief to express his concern to the chief about one of the chief's officers.
And Mayor, what is your thoughts on this? The mother of 5 that's been missing since July, and this investigation in Bardstown is pretty popular, everyone knows about it around here, and then this happens, the fact that this officer has been terminated in connection to his interference into the investigation. What do you think about this? I mean, it's a small town, a lot of people hear about the fact that this brother of 5 is missing.
I think the community is very concerned over it, but according to this, these documents, when Chief McCubbin and Tim brought the matter to me, my words were, if we're moving forward with this, we make sure, and I told them to make sure that you have your ducks in order. Make sure that we're correct in what we're going to do. And when the evidence is presented, when it was presented yesterday, that's when I made my decision. And I think I will stand by Chief McCubbin's in his earlier statement that as myself being a prior police officer, I think what was done, what he's done was improper and incorrect. And we can't allow that or stand for that. And I will stand behind the chief, and that's my understanding and that's my belief too.
Are you in close contact with the Nelson County Sheriff's Department regarding this investigation? It's garnered national attention.
No, I am not, because that is, I run the city. That is a police matter, and I have full confidence in the chief and officers in the sheriff's department to do their job. And matter of fact, expect them to do their job. So I leave that to them. I'm just a city manager, I guess, or the mayor, and I do my own job.
And again, that goes back to the issue of, we wanted to make sure through this process, I want to reiterate, we want to make sure during this process that we did not do anything to interfere with the investigation. How ironic it would have been had we messed up somehow the criminal investigation because we alleged that an officer interfered with the investigation. So we've tried to our best to, as would be our roles, to distance ourselves from that, because it's not a crime or alleged crime or a disappearance that involves the city of Bardstown. We address this as a personnel matter with a city police officer.
You were talking about the timeline a little bit. To finish that up, you'll notice the dates from that first occurrence until the day I suspended him. And that, the gap there, I guess, was because exactly what Mr. Butler was saying. We wanted to make sure that what we wanted to do would not interfere with criminal. So I had to talk with the prosecution side of things. If anything were to come out, we did not want this to screw anything up in that area. So, if you're wondering the gap in between of what happened and the day was actually suspended, that's why we were just doing like I would in anything I'm looking at. I want to be thorough and make sure that I have what I present to the attorney and the mayor would be, fits the elements, basically.
This may be a question for the sheriff's department, but now that he's been terminated, can he be considered a suspect in that case, the Crystal Rock?
Yeah, that would be completely up to them.
As far as the polygraph test that's referenced a few times, and I think there's only one polygraph test that was administered. Was that administered on behalf of, I know the FBI did the administration, but was that by the request of Bardstown City Police, or by the sheriff's office?
It wasn't done by at our request.
And the sheriff.
And I'd like to express to everybody that this process and what we're going through right now was given a lot of thought, a lot of detail, and it was a decision that was heartfelt, and it was a major decision, and it wasn't just something that we do every day. It's a major decision to do something.
Was it a tough decision to make?
Yes, it always is.
What now, Chief McCubbin? Has he turned his things in?
Yes.
Did he do that before when he was suspended, or has he done that?
I took the badging done, as the model would be. I took his authority and those items when I suspended him. But yes, he's in the process of returning all properties that belong to Bardstown Police and ours.
You had mentioned several times in here about Officer Nick Houck saying perhaps maybe disparaging things about Detective Snow, and saying that Detective Snow lies to juries. Was that something that had come up before, or was there tension there?
I was not aware of anything along those lines. It didn't speak out that where that came from. That was the first we heard of it. Let me tell you that. That was the first we'd ever heard of anything along those lines from anybody. You know, any side of law enforcement, the court family. That was never even brought up until he made that statement.
Does the city have custody of his police cruiser?
Sheriff's does.
Is there a specific reason for why Nick Houck's status with the police department went in gradual steps? Like, for example, a person was suspended with pay, then without pay, now he's terminated. Is there a reason for why the police department did not pursue termination directly?
Well, I have the authority to suspend administratively and pull police powers. So I did that immediately. Then I send that to the mayor. The mayor's the only one that can suspend without pay. So once, I guess again, once I convince the mayor what I would like and make my request to him, he made the ultimate decision to suspend without pay.
And there's a section of state law, KRS 15520, which is the Police Officer's Bill of Rights, which requires certain administrative procedures and certain protections for a police officer. And again, a little bit of the timeline in terms of the delay. First and foremost, we had to proceed with caution because we realized that there was a criminal investigation. So we had to proceed with caution. Then we had to meet the criteria of KRS 15520. Which requires the chief to put together information and basically do what's called a charging document. And again, that's part of the records for this case. Once that's done, once that was done and submitted, after we decided that we could proceed without hindering the criminal prosecution, the chief did that document. Mr. Houck was suspended with pay. We established a hearing date, which was sometime, I think, back in September. Mr. Houck retained an attorney. That attorney had a conflict with that date. So when that date came and went, we reestablished a second date, which was yesterday. And the difference between the suspended with pay and suspended without pay coincides with, he went from suspended with pay to suspended without pay on the date that we had set for that original hearing.
Chief, do you recall when the last time an officer was fired for interfering with a criminal investigation?
No, I can't.
So
You can hear or overall?
Here.
No.
So how, could you put it into perspective, how unique of a situation it is for you as chief to have to do that, considering this is one of the biggest cases that have come around in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it has an impact. It does. And, again, I go back to what I expect of police officers. I'm the chief, but I'm still a cop. I would not look at it that way if I was doing that case. So again, I hold the officers to a higher standard. And, how it was handled, again, I just have to go back to, that's just not how we do it as police officers. We don't get that option to not participate, to not be a part of when requested. That's in the oath, that's in the canon of ethics that you may receive through the open records. There are just many things laid out there for us as police officers that we will do. And like I said, picking and choosing what we want to be a part of is not an option at all. And it's when a police officer does that, then I want exactly what the mayor did to happen. Not on my watch, as they say. Any police officer for that matter, but certainly as long as I'm chief, I don't want a police officer working underneath, representing our department, our city, and this community that's not going to give it 100%.
But there's other charges besides just interfering with the investigation. There's ethic charges that were done. As chief had quoted the canon of ethics and Washington policies and procedures were violated. There's more than just that.
Did you say who Nick Houck's attorney was? His name, is that part of it?
Yes, his name was Irwin Roberts. He's an attorney out of Louisville.
In the authoring of this document here, part of a passage reads, Mr. Houck could have and should have asserted his constitutional rights, which as a police officer he knew or should have. So, one of which was the right to remain silent. Who is it that sounds like an opinion? Is that the mayor's opinion or is that the chief's opinion?
That was, just so that you all understand how the final order was drafted, the chief and I, or excuse me, the mayor and I had extensive discussions after the administrative hearing. The mayor identified his areas of concern, and then as the city attorney, I drafted the final order that you all have there. Part of the administrative hearing was dealing with and as it says in the order, and was tough for the mayor. And when somebody says, I'm put in a tough position here, I've got, I'm potentially a suspect, and people are looking at me and as a guilty party, and I'm trying to protect myself, but yet do my job as a police officer. And as the mayor has explained to me, and we've discussed, and is written in that order, there are procedures. There's a path out of that quandary, if you will, or that quagmire, and that is to seek advice from your superiors, from the chief or from a prosecutor. If he would have chosen to remain silent and assert a right, which he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law of anything in the United States of America, and if he would have asserted that right to remain silent as a protection, then again, as it says in that order, we might not have been here. But he did not do that, and he took a different path, and it's unfortunate, I think, for everybody involved.
What kind of weight do these charges carry?
What kind of weight do these charges carry?
Yeah, he's got the...
About 3-4 ounces. Yeah. This is an administrative process, so what these findings are findings that justify his removal as a police officer, and that's it. This is the findings here are findings that justify the action that the mayor took to terminate him as a police officer.
There's no criminal charges, no, just administrative.
Yeah, we can't charge anybody. The chief can. The chief can charge people criminally, but the mayor and I have no authority to charge anyone criminally. So this is not in any way, shape, or form a criminal. And there's no. If you'll read carefully, there's no. I guess I'd leave it to a prosecutor, but there's no, not necessarily criminal behavior here that we've alleged or found.
As far as the interfering with an ongoing criminal investigation, is the phone call the only instance that you are aware of where it would rise to the level of interfering with an ongoing investigation?
I'll let the chief comment too, but that's the primary allegation for sure.
But is that the only instance the city's aware
In terms of interfering, you'll notice that there's also, and again, we had we discussed this at length, that there was a lack of cooperation. That's not necessarily interfering with. And that's a fine line. We all understand that. But in terms of one is maybe a sin of omission, the other one's a sin of commission. He did something to hinder the investigation, whereas in other respects, he didn't cooperate with the investigation, and that's laid out in that statement. But as far as I know, in terms of the sin of commission, where he took some sort of action, I think that would be the only one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and he really, I guess if you think about it, he injected himself into this. He made that call. He was not necessarily on the radar. But by him making that call, he therefore entered into the entire investigation. That, yes, of course, that was the first and really only forward-moving thing that he did. The rest of it was more of in a passive way. His lack of candor stood out to me as much as anything. And like I said, it's a lot of what he didn't do as much as what he did do. That was kind of the balance that I looked at. That I think was as bad as doing something proactive, if you will. The fact that he didn't do what a police officer should do on either side, adverse or horrific. So.
And were there, I'm curious because I think it says here that you found out shortly afterward, this occurred on July 8th, the phone call. And I believe it says in here, I'm not sure that you found out shortly thereafter. Now, he was a police officer at the Bardstown Police for a while after that. You guys share a building with the investigating agency on or about July 8th or shortly thereafter. Were there any measures taken to ensure that there was no sort of more overt or any other sort of interference with this investigation?
Well, I don't know.
I believe it's accessible. I mean, you can just
Yeah, oh yeah.
your office, right?
There are 3 agencies in that building. But no, that was in their detective office, if you will, which we don't have access to those files. We don't have access to that office. We have access to the buildings, the outer offices, I guess you could say. But no, I understand what you're asking, but no, there's no way any of us could go into their areas of investigation or files, if you will, more than they could come into ours. That's just not really it's just not possible, I guess you could say. And we have no indication that he did. Again, he was more removed from it than he was proactive, if that makes sense.
And Chief, you've had to address this investigation at least one time publicly, just saying that the Bardstown Police Department is not investigating Crystal Rogers' disappearance. After something like this comes out, what do you have to say to the public? I mean, just following up to that address.
That we still don't have we still don't. It's not our case. It just happened that the person of interest that the sheriff's office is looking at has a brother that's one of our officers. If he wasn't brothers, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But the fact that he was a brother, we're still not a part of the investigation in any way. And I say that loosely because obviously if the sheriff were to come to us to ask us to do something like we would with KSP or any law enforcement agency, we would certainly do that, but we really haven't been. Early on that we were doing very small things just to help them get some stuff together, but we're not a part of it. We really are not. Obviously our only interest in it was when our officer injected himself into, reaching out to his brother in the middle of that investigation and interview.
Yeah, this might be asking for opinions, so I'll just let you decide if you're going to answer it or not. But with the police cruiser still being impounded, doesn't that suggest that there is suspicion of some sort of commission rather than omission actions that went on either by, whether that's the sheriff's office or so I understand they're the ones that impounded it. But doesn't that suggest that there are suspicions of actions beyond just omission?
I think that would be a question for the sheriff's department. We, as part of what we did here, We assumed that that was purely coincidental. We assumed that the any kind of investigation would come back completely exonerating Officer Houck, former Officer Houck, his brother. That was the position that we took. We said that again, and that is out of deference to the ongoing criminal investigation, and that honestly makes it a little more difficult on us to proceed under those auspices, but we did that. And so in terms of an opinion, I'm probably like the rest of Barstown. You have opinions about things, but our opinion in this particular case is really not important. We don't have any official capacity to render opinion. And as I used to tell people when I was working for government myself, certain matters, if you go outside and talk to the person who was just using the leaf blower, their opinion is as important as mine in that respect. So,
why was his car impounded in the first place? Why?
have to ask the sheriff's department about that.
The city police car, it don't belong to the sheriff's department, it belongs to the city.
Yeah, the city, it was requested, they requested the car as part of their investigation, and the chief determined that it should be turned over to the sheriff's department if it was part of their investigation. Just like any property, if there's any property the city of Barstown had that state police or anyone felt like was part of a criminal investigation, if they requested it of the city of Barstown, city of Barstown would try their very best to accommodate that request.
That was Nick Houck's personal car he drove, right, for the city police?
That was his police cruiser.
Police car, yes.
And he was able to take it home, right? It was a take-home vehicle?
Yes.
And really, any tip that came in, we were going to react on. And we kept hearing allegations and tips. And, that I guess kind of shows how we were going to cooperate, obviously, in any way we could. So if someone were to come and say, hey, something with that police car, you don't have to convince me or ask me twice. Take it. I mean, I'm going to cooperate 100%. And it's certainly our police car, so I don't have to ask, I guess, but when that came out, then yeah, I absolutely wanted them to have it, and to either clear it or not. It's like any tip you would get, you have to follow up with it. So that's why we did that, to be honest with you. And again, like he said, the exact status of it, I think I think I can safely say it's pretty wrapped up. But it will ultimately be up to the sheriff and then to, when it comes back, I guess.
Chief Cubbins, you originally made the statement at the time when the car was impounded, the car was in the shop. So now coming back with this new evidence, what do you have to say to the community of Bardstown, and how do you justify making that type of statement?
I didn't have to answer the question in the first place, to be quite honest. And it was an ongoing investigation, so
Would it have been better in your position to not answer the question instead of to tell a lie or maybe to exaggerate the truth over it?
Not necessarily, no.
You have you instructed your officers a certain narrative when the public asks them. You walked up to them and asked them about Nick Houck, and instructed your officers in any phrase or any wording to tell the public on what their opinion is on this.
Do you say did I or will I?
Have you or will you?
No, I haven't yet. We're really just finding out. I'm just finding out, obviously, just before you all. So, but now that it's over, it's closed, it's adjudicated, and he's terminated, they would really, I'm sure they've got their opinions. I think most of them will be happy, I'll be quite honest with you. Once you lose the trust of the police, it's over. And I think his fellow officers will appreciate the mayor's decision.
What you have to understand is once the hearing was over, Mr. Butler and I worked extensively between each other, talking to, because I had some great concerns, and we tossed back and forth ideas, and no one was aware of what my decision was going to be or what it would be. And the only one that was aware of that is when I give that decision to Mr. Butler. And then I think late this morning, the chief had received notice, but no one else had gotten a notice.
Chief, did you see this coming? You've been familiar with the case when Crystal first went missing, and, you know, Brooks was the first person I think they questioned, knowing that that was one of your officers' brothers. Did you see this coming?
This today? Or?
Any of this?
Well, no, I didn't. And I didn't until he injected himself into it, that phone call. That was one of those, why would you do that? Obviously, we need to talk. And that started it. He had no involvement or anything in it until he did that. So that's when I had to take action, to be quite honest. Again, it's just not acceptable as a police officer to do that. So.
Was the phone call recorded? Was the phone call recorded?
Which phone call?
The phone call that Houck made to his brother. When you said
I don't know, I don't know if the sheriff's office has it recorded, or I honestly don't.
Who has the phone? Someone, the sheriff's department has the phone?
I would assume.
The FBI?
Yeah, one of them.
Is Houck allowed to make contact with other members of your department now that you've been terminated, or has he been banned from making contact with anyone?
No, I don't.
He's a private individual
Yeah,
now. He can make contact
Yeah.
with whoever a private individual can make contact with.
I don't know if my officers want to have contact with him.
And is this, I guess the question was asked, is this the first instance that you fired an officer?
Is it the first?
Is this the first officer that has been fired through the Bardstown Police Department?
To this degree, yes, ma'am. Yes.
Mr. Butler, can you describe the appeals process if Mr. Houck decides to appeal this decision?
Yes, sir. Under that same KRS 15520, it provides that within 30 days of the final order, which is 30 days from today, he can appeal that to Circuit Court, Nelson Circuit Court. It's an appeal and complaint that has to be filed, and it would be appealing the mayor's action to terminate Officer Houck. Any other questions?
Is there a potential for him to be rehired by either your agency or another agency in the state?
Not this one, as long as I'm chief. I don't know what the future will bring, but I think no. Once you're fired as a police officer, you're done in law enforcement. And he should be done. But he won't be back here as long as I'm chief, or rehired, let me put it that way. And I can't imagine another police department hiring him after we fired him. I wouldn't hire another police officer from another department that was fired like this. So I can't imagine that any other would, and hope they wouldn't. Hope they wouldn't.
Anything else?
Okay. That concludes this press conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir, if you could tell us your name, please.
Yes, I'm Mike Ballard. I'm the uncle of Crystal Rogers.
Could you spell your name for us?
It's
please?
Ballard.
Mike, how do you feel after listening to this press conference?
I think we've got some answers that we were looking for, and as far as the family's concerned, we've been waiting for this for a while now, and I'm glad this part of it at least has happened. I mean, I think that, I don't know, I guess makes you feel better to somewhat of this portion of it's kind of over. We've been waiting for it.
Does it in any way reinvigorate any hope of this, of you guys finding out, getting some closure? Does it reinvigorate your belief in the investigation at all?
Well, it seems that they're moving forward in that direction like they should be. I don't know, as far as relief goes and closure, I don't think you're going to get closure until, Crystal's found. And, of course, whoever is responsible for her disappearance is brought to justice.
Can you talk a little bit about how difficult just the months passing since July, how difficult it's been for this family just the developments in this case?
For her mom and dad, I mean, it's been horrible. I can't imagine what they're going through as a parent. You know, my parents. They went through it, you know, my sister. So that, you know, kind of brings back all that. It's been tough.
The fact that you learned today that they definitely think that Houck had, you know, a role in the interference of this investigation, how is that making you all feel?
There was no doubt in our mind, as far as that goes, that he, you know, we felt that he did. Anyway, again, we know they have his car still. There's a reason why they have his car. That's for sure. What that reason is, we don't know. And I understand the police can't tell you everything. But as far as that, because it is an ongoing investigation, and they've got to keep things quiet too, because they don't want to hinder their investigation. But obviously, as far as our opinion goes, that we think the police car definitely had some involvement in this, in her disappearance.
Are you happy that she was fired?
I don't know if you would call it happy, as far as that goes. How can you be happy about any of it? But I do think that lets us know that they are going on with the investigation and are working on the case.
Is there anything that the public can do to help you guys?
Just keep their eyes and ears open, and, you know, if they got something that they know, call the sheriff's department and let them know.
Do you think his termination is enough?
If he is involved, no, absolutely not. Again, the termination, I think, does help us a little bit. But, you know, how can you ever get enough as far as that goes? We definitely want justice to be served if he is in fact involved in this criminal activity. Not saying that he is, but if he is involved in it, then we hope he's brought to justice.
Thank you.
Okay.